Hello, I'm Joseph Barber, and this is the start of a series retrospective on Buffy the Vampire Slayer. We'll begin with Season 1 and gradually work through the series. This is designed for those first watching, people aiming to revisit, or anyone interested in the seminal show. I will aim to have spoilers only for the rest of the season and not future ones, though a few references might slip in here or there. Buffy the Vampire Slayer is a show that first aired on the fledgling WB network in 1997. It was the brainchild of Joss Whedon, who 5 years earlier had helped create a feature film of the same name, which met to mixed reception. The show, on the other hand, launched quickly to critical acclaim and was praised for its wit, character development, and the ability to discuss complicated teen issues in an approachable but not condescending way. My experience with Buffy is watching it every night while in high school, starting from the middle of Season 1 and seeing it through to the end. While it was not the original airing, I was perfectly in the demographic at the time, and even though some of the technology, and especially the CGI, was dated, I still fell in love with it. I've watched the whole series about 3 times now, and individual episodes many more times than that. It is still my favorite show of all time, and even if it may not necessarily be the best written or directed, I still love it. Season 1 is the shortest season of Buffy, being only 12 40-minute episodes long. It introduces us to all our main characters, gives the base rules for magical beings in the Buffyverse, and established a lot of the common themes and plots that would continue throughout the series. The main theme being that high school sucks, and sometimes it's literally hell. Even in its first season, it brought in an average of 3.7 million viewers, which for a relatively new network and show was very impressive, leading to a second season being ordered almost immediately. Production of the first season was done all at once, with the whole season being written and filmed in about 6 months. Due to this, it comes across a bit undeveloped. With future seasons, they were able to use viewer feedback to make certain roles bigger, or to develop plot points while dropping others. There was none of this at the start, and although it's fairly typical for TV shows, the effect is noticeable. It's difficult to find the actual budget, but it was apparently around $1 million an episode, which was fairly generous at the time. The most important part of the show was the characters. They were the lifeblood, and what made all the weird supernatural stuff relatable. The most important character, of course, is the titular one, Buffy, portrayed by Sarah Michelle Gellar. In the pilot of the show, she still shows off a lot of traits that define her in the future, though she is definitely much more on the Valley Girl side of things at the start. She's resourceful, caring, and brave. She's the archetypal Gryffindor. She's resistant to the whole chosen one thing, but it's understandable. A lot of the season is spent trying to balance her 2 lives, a standard high schooler and an evil fighting superhero. In addition to Buffy, we have her 2 best friends, Xander Harris and Willow Rosenberg. Xander, portrayed by Nicholas Brendon, unfortunately is very much stuck in his Buffy-obsessed phase for much of the season, pining over her in quite a creepy way. That's actually a bit of a theme this season, with unrequited love being passed around a fair bit. He is very much the goofy sidekick this season, with both him and Willow acting as the audience's perspective, newbies into the vampire world. While he does do a few things this season, like almost get eaten by a seductive bug lady and partially turned into a hyena, overall his development is fairly limited. The most insight we get into him is with nightmares, but even that is just some childhood fears. He is very much the Hufflepuff of the group, and feels a bit underutilized. Willow fares a little better. She still has a big crush on Xander, but it's not the only element of her we see. She even has an episode mostly focused on her in iRobot, You Jane. Admittedly, that's a bit of a shitty episode, but it offers some depth to her behind just being a shy, nerdy Ravenclaw. While she definitely hasn't spread her wings, she still gives them a flap or 2. She also has a more defined niche than Xander, being the computer girl, so she has more to do on the average episode. Allison Hannigan gets to show off her acting chops a couple times as well, and I'm actually a big fan of her monologue in Prophecy Girl. It's definitely overdramatic, but it fits the tone of the episode so well that I can't help but get emotionally invested. Angel acts as a mysterious present for the first half of the season, showing up to offer cryptic hints and brood, while occasionally fighting monsters. Then we have the big revelation that he is in fact a vampire. A cured, less blood-sucky version, but still. This is a bit difficult to reconcile with the whole Slayer thing. It also feeds into Xander's hate boner for vampires, as well as his White Knight incidents, and creates a fair bit of drama. We get a basic history of him from his own mouth, as well as learning of his near suicidal need to do good deeds to make up for the evil he brought into the world. Though Angel is one major source of conflict in the season, the other is the big bad, the Master. Each season had at least one, and the Master is actually not bad for a first attempt. Although the concept, an old vampire trapped in a mystical prison who wants to get free, is not exactly exciting, Mark Metcalf added a lot of character to their performance. He's very much the classical villain, with monologues, henchmen, and elaborate plans where he moans to his subordinates after they fail. He very much represents the status quo, the patriarchy, and evil. He's fairly one note on the scale of things, but serves as a good introductory villain to the series. Rounding out the main cast is Giles, Buffy's watcher and caretaker, as well as the keeper of all knowledge. He's very much the stuffy British librarian in this season, though it is clear from very early on that he cares dearly for Buffy. He is also shown to be unafraid to leap into the fray, even if it's not the best idea. Anthony Stewart Head does a good job with what he's got, and he definitely could have been much more insufferable if played without charisma. There are some good interactions between him and other faculty at the school, but he doesn't really get involved that much. Overall, the season is mostly filler for him, but his presence is still known and appreciated. Now we'll go over the individual episodes. I won't do a review of all of them, but instead, there are a few distinct bunches. There's the pilot, which is a two-parter, 4 Monster of the Week episodes, Angel, 4 Monster of the Week episodes, and then the finale. The pilot does a great job of starting the series, and actually was nominated for an Emmy. Admittedly, it was for makeup, but that's something. We get an introduction to all the characters, a solid mid-level villain, and a good mix of drama, action, and exposition. There are a few oddities with later episodes. Vampires look more ghoulish, they're much wider, and have animal faces. Then there's Jesse, a character who was allegedly Willow and Xander's best friend, whose death is never mentioned again. But ignoring that, you end up with a solid couple of episodes. Interestingly enough, Darla was supposed to die during the second episode, though at the last minute it was decided that she could live so they could have a recurring villain. After that, we settle into a routine couple of episodes. They aren't bad exactly, just unexciting. If you skip them on a rewatch, you'd miss nothing of the main plot, and very little in terms of character moments. This is what makes them Monster of the Week. That is what makes them Monster of the Week. A villain is introduced, they fight it, it's defeated, and there's no fallout. A few notes on the individual episodes. In The Witch, it's nice to see how magic works in the Buffy universe, though there are a few inconsistencies with later in the series. Buffy immediately trying to do something normal in cheerleading, but have it be ruined by supernatural stuff, is also a good early example of what is a common theme. It's probably the best of this lot. Teacher's Pet is mediocre, though at least there is an explanation for why all the boys lust over the new substitute teacher. It's very formulaic, almost to a Scooby-Doo level, and is very overt in its high school problem is a demon thing. Never Kill a Boy on the First Date again shows how difficult it will be for Buffy to reconcile her Slayer life with her normal life. And she does make an important decision in the end, that if someone is just thrill-seeking and actively wants her life, they will never be able to have a normal relation. The fact that there's no outside force in this one is nice, and it is a fairly solid episode, even if the character of Owen is a bit meh. The Pack is another episode that is very over the top about its message. Cliques are bad, not much else to say about this one, though we do get a much better principal character in Snyder, a very much human evil. Angel is next, and it sets the standard for a good drama episode. It's still rough around the edges, some of Angel's speech comes off a bit static, and the 3 just end up not mattering at all, but the underlying frame of it is good enough that it stands out as the second best episode of the season. I actually really like the end sequence as well, even if it is kind of dumb. When Darla just takes out a pair of pistols, it's such a weird juxtaposition, but it really works for me. Old versus new, stakes versus bullets. I also like how in the end she still believes she can turn Angel, ignoring all the other signs because of her care for him. I wonder if that theme will ever come up again. After that, we have another few Monster of the Week. I, Robot You Jane is Buffy's failed attempt at how the internet and computers in general work. It is a demon haunting everything, so that's some explanation, but it definitely does not hold up to a modern viewing. On the bright side, we get introduced to Miss Calendar, who is a solid character with a good role to play next season. Puppet Show has a neat twist at the end, but is otherwise very unremarkable. But at least we can all agree on one thing: those puppets are creepy. Nightmares is a neat episode, though it actually is done much better really twice in later seasons. Still, it was a solid first attempt and had some neat imagery. It also shows off Sarah Michelle Gellar's acting, as her nightmare dad tells her that he doesn't love her in a crushing moment. Having the villain not be something demonic, but just be an evil coach was also a good choice that lends some solid stability to the episode. Out of Sight is a solid effort that puts some good seeds for the future. The government agent angle comes into play later, and we finally get Cordelia being something other than a complete and utter bitch. This is my favorite of the lot, and the special effects have actually not aged too badly. Finally, we have Prophecy Girl. For this one, it felt like everyone was giving it their all, from actors to writers to the director. In it, Buffy has to confront her own morality, not on a philosophical level or an event that's happening to someone else. No, it is written that she will die. No ifs, ands, or buts. Of course, she doesn't die permanently, but it is a scary few minutes. It's also very important that in the end, she isn't forced into her fate. She doesn't fall into it. She walks in with confidence, doing something that is right because it's right, no matter the consequences. That's like the single thing that resonates from her most strongly throughout the series. That heroism. There are other great moments like Willow and Cordelia stumbling upon the corpses of the classmates and how it affects them both. There is also Giles trying desperately to change fate, to do anything but let his charge die. Xander's heroism comes to the forefront as well, which is nice, and it's probably his best moment in the season, because it's clear what he does because he genuinely loves Buffy, even if she doesn't reciprocate. That love, or heart, is his driving force, and is often the role he serves in the story. So I've got real stakes, some decent action, and ultimately a very satisfying conclusion to the season. In terms of finales, it doesn't rank that highly. It's maybe last or second to last, but that's only because the others are so damn good. It's probably in the 9 out of 10 territory, which is a pretty big step up from the rest of the season, and indicative of what's to come. So there you have it, a relatively brief look at Season 1 of Buffy the Vampire Slayer. On the whole, there are definitely growing pains, and the majority of the season is taken up by Monster of the Week episodes, which are on the weaker side of the stories, but it's a solid start. I'd say the anchor episodes, Pilot, Angel, and Finale, make the whole thing worth watching, though you wouldn't lose much by missing the rest of the season. If I were doing a rewatch, I'd pick one of the 4 Monster of the Week episodes in each group that sounds the most interesting, and watch that one, skipping the rest. This makes a solid 6-episode season with little filler. So that's that. I'll try to put these out about once a month, but we'll see. Have a nice day.